Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this. I hope everyone is having a great day. Today we're going to go ahead and start Chapter 8, starting with multiplying and dividing rational expressions. So let's go ahead and look at our example. The Goody Shop sells candy and nuts by the pound. One item is a mixture made with 8 pounds of peanuts and 5 pounds of cashews. Therefore, in order to figure out the total mixture, we would have 8 over 8 plus 5, because 8 plus 5 is the total mixture, so it's 8 over 13. If the store manager adds an additional X pounds of peanuts to the mixture, write a new ratio to show what proportion of the mixture is peanuts. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to say, well, when we're looking at this, we know that we have peanuts over the total. So my pounds of peanuts right now are 8 over my total pounds of peanuts, total mixture pounds is 13. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we are going to add X pounds of peanuts. Well, if I have peanuts in my numerator, I need to add X to my numerator. And if I add X peanuts, I'm also going to add that to the total mixture, so plus X. So our new ratio would be 8 plus X over 13 plus X. Okay, this is what we call a rational expression. A lot of people remember it because it's a ratio, so it looks like a fraction. In order to be a ratio, okay, you need to have two polynomials. One is in the numerator and one is in the denominator. So today we're going to look at multiplying and dividing rational expressions. So how do we multiply? Well, the way we do it is we multiply numerators and you multiply the denominators. So you would take 5x times x minus 2, and then you would take x plus 1 and x minus 1, and that is what would be in the denominator. To divide, okay, we multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor. So in this case, my divisor is this piece. So in order to simplify, I would have 5x over x plus 1 times my reciprocal. So I flip it, x minus 1 over x minus 2. That's how we divide rational expressions. After we do this, we would once again factor everything you can out. Then you would simplify. Third step is to perform the operation. So you multiply, divide, add, and subtract. And then finally you would check to make sure you have factored and simplified all the way again. So let's go ahead and just look at an example. Example 1, I look at this and I see that I am multiplying. So in order to do this, I would look at what do I have for numeric values. I have 4 and 16, both divisible by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 16 divided by 4 is 4. Then I have 5 and 15, both divisible by 5. So this is 3, and this is 1. And then remember, we multiply across. So I would have 1 times 3, so in my numerator I would for sure have 3, and my denominator I would have 1 times 4, which is 4. After this, I would go ahead and look at the variables. I have a to the first and a to the third. You always want to bring the smaller value to the larger, and remember we would subtract. So I have a to the 3 minus 1, so I have a to the second in the denominator. Same thing with my b's. I go ahead and look at them. I have b to the first and b to the second. So the larger is in the numerator, so it will stay in the numerator. And I would have 2 minus 1, which will give me 1. Typically, we do not write 1, so I would just have this written as 3b over 4a squared. Okay. Example 2, when I look at this, I see it's division. So in order to divide, we multiply by the reciprocal. So in this case, I'm just going to rewrite. So I have 4x squared y all over 15a to the third, b to the third, times 5ab to the third over 2xy squared. And this is times. So same idea as last time. I want to go ahead and simplify. So I have 5 and 15, both divisible by 5. So I have 1 and 3. 4 and 2, both divisible by 2. So this gives me 2. This gives me 1. So if I multiply, I would have 2 times 1. So 2 and 3 times 1, so 3. Then I would look at, I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So I have a to the third and a to the first. So always bring the smaller to the larger. So the larger is in the denominator. So I would have 3 minus 1, so a to the second. Now I'm going to look at b. Just maybe mark it on my sheet if I want here too. b to the third and b to the third. Same number over the same number is always going to equal 1. Otherwise, you could think about it, it would be 3 minus 3, which would give me 0, and anything to the 0 power is just 1. So they simplify. Next, I'm going to look at x. I have x to the second and x to the first. My large is in the numerator. So I have x to the 2 minus 1, which is 1. And then I have y to the first and y to the second. Large is in the denominator. So I would have 2 minus 1, so I have y to the first. So just to simplify and write my answer maybe a little bit nicer, I would have 2x, 3a squared, y. Moving on to example 3. Same idea here. I look to see what numeric values I have. I have 15 and 5, both divisible by 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. 5 divided by 5 is 1. I have 8 and 12, both divisible by 4. So this would give me 2. This would give me 3. Once again, I'm just going to double check. Notice I have 3 over 3. Well, that's going to simplify to 1. So numerically, I'm going to have 2 times 1, so 2, and 1 times 1, so I have 1 in my denominator, so we don't typically write 1. And then I will have, I'm going to look at my letters, I have m squared and m to the third. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down here. 3 minus 2 is 1, so I have m in the denominator. Now I have n. Notice this, I have n here and n here, so I would have n squared in the numerator. I'm just going to rewrite that, and I have n squared in the denominator. Now let's look at r. I have r to the first and r to the second. The larger is in the denominator, so I would have r in the denominator. 2 minus 1 is 1, so I'd have r to the first. And one thing I notice is the n squared over n squared simplifies to 1, so I would have 2 over mr. One thing I would like you to also notice is you could also write this as 2rm. When you multiply, it doesn't matter what order you write them in. Okay, so just one thing to keep in mind. Example 4, right away again, division. So I need to multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite. So I have 18ab squared all over 25x squared y to the third times, now multiply by the reciprocal. So 10xy, so I flip it, over 9b. Now I go ahead and I look, 10 and 25, both divisible by 5. This gives me 2, this gives me 5. 18 and 9, both divisible by 9, so I get 2 and 1. Then I would see, does anybody else simplify? No. So 2 times 2 is 4. 5 times 1 is 5. And now I have a, and I do not have any other a's, so a will stay. Then I look at b. I have b to the second and b to the first. My larger is in the numerator, so I would have b to the 2 minus 1. So I have b to the first in my numerator. And then I look at x. I have x squared and x to the first. So larger is in the denominator, so I have x to the 2 minus 1, which is 1. And lastly, I have y. Y to the first and y to the third. Larger is in the denominator, so it would be 3 minus 1, so y to the second. So my final answer is 4ab all over 5xy squared. Okay. Now would be a great time if you need a little bit of a break to take a break. Write down any questions you might have. Otherwise, I would recommend that you try and do 5 and 6 on your own, and then just follow along and make sure that you got the same answer as I did. Otherwise, if you don't need a break, I'm going to continue on. So I would have 9 and 27, both divisible by 9. 8 and 16, both divisible by 8. So I would have 1 times 1 and 2 times 3, so 6. Now I'm going to look at this in alphabetical order again. I have a to the first and a to the second, so my large is in the numerator, so I will have a to the 2 minus 1. So this is a to the first. Now I would have b. I have b to the first and b to the fourth, so b to the 4 minus 1 is 3. Now I'm going to look at m. I have m to the second and m to the fifth. The large is in the denominator, so I would have 5 minus 2, which is m to the third. This one's gone. And lastly, my n. I have n to the third and n to the first, so my larger is in my numerator, so n will stay in the numerator. 3 minus 1 is 2. So I look, is there anything else that can be simplified? No, so my final answer is a, n to the second, over 6, b to the third, m to the third. Not sure why I rewrote it. It looks exactly the same as the one I had before. So Our last example is example 6. Once again, division. So I need to multiply by the reciprocal. I would have 14 PQ squared all over 15 W to the 7th Z to the 3rd times, now multiply by the reciprocal, 35 W to the 3rd Z to the 8th all over 21 P to the 3rd there we go, P to the 3rd Q. Now I'm going to go ahead and simplify. I have 14, 21, both divisible by 7, so I have 2 and 3. 35 and 15, both divisible by 5, so I have 7 and 3. Can anything else simplify? No, so I would have 2 times 7, which is 14. 3 times 3, which is 9. P to the 1st, P to the 3rd. So I would have my larger p's than the denominator, so it's 3 minus 1, which is 2. 2. This one is gone. Now I'm going to look at q. I have q to the 2nd and q to the 1st, larger than the numerator. So I will have q to the 2 minus 1, so q to the 1st. W, I have w to the 7th and w to the 3rd. Larger is in the denominator, so it will be in the denominator. 7 minus 3 is 4. And lastly, my z's. Z to the 8th and z to the 3rd. So my larger z is in the numerator, so it's going to be 8 minus 3, which is 5. So my final answer for this one is 14q z to the 5th all over 9p squared w to the 4th. Okay. I am going to go ahead and stop the video here. This is part 1 of section 8.1. Take a break, go do something if you want, and then you can watch part 2. Otherwise, I will see you later and have a great day.